Hello and welcome to Week 12. This is Bud Light's Prediction Amongst Friends. I'm your host, Hans Heiser. Appreciate you guys joining us. The football season has absolutely flown by. We're already into the college football playoff committee's selection process. Georgia last week, #1. We know what happened against Auburn. They fall down to 7. Alabama now the new #1. So a lot to get into. We have 9 games this week in the Southeastern Conference to break down. And we'll do what we do every week. We'll jump out here and we'll reach out to Alex Martin-Smith out in Nashville, Tennessee. Alex, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you too, Hans. Thanks for bringing me back this week. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you do a pretty good job, so we're going to keep doing this thing. Look, your overall thoughts real quick going into Week 12. I know it's hard to believe it's already here, but, I mean, we know who's coming from the East. With the West, it's pretty self-explanatory. You got the Iron Bowl next week, but other than that, a lot of teams still playing with a lot of pride, some coaches on the hot seat. There's a lot of stuff that's still topical.
Yeah, the cynics will look at this week as a boring week, something that they don't want to spend their time on. But there are a lot of storylines if you want to look into the details here. You got Missouri quarterback Drew Lock chasing that passing touchdown conference record. You've got Jordan Ta'amu, who's averaging about 400 yards passing since he took over for Shea Patterson. And you got, how is Tennessee going to respond without Butch? I think there's still a lot of interesting stuff going on this weekend.
Well, with the new polls that came out, Alex, Alabama at #1, Georgia at #7, which I alluded to, Auburn at #6. We were talking last week about could the SEC possibly get 2 teams in the college football playoff. I'm trying to envision a scenario in my mind where that could take place. I know there's one out there. It would take a whole lot of other things to happen. Is there any way we could get 2 in there?
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be that complicated or difficult to happen. I think, if you go into that SEC title game where it's Bama and Georgia, and Bama's still undefeated, and Georgia gets just a close win in that game, maybe 3 points, 7 points, I think it's going to be really hard for the committee to leave out Alabama with 1 loss in that scenario because Georgia's going to be back up in that 1, 2, 3 range. I feel like it's going to take a lot from these other conferences to keep Alabama out with that 1 close loss. So it'll be fun to keep track of all of it, and I know that there's a lot of great teams in the other conferences, but it's certainly still a reality here that there could be 2 SEC teams in.
Well, let's take a look at what happened last week as far as you and I go, the favorites as well. Look at the records for the year. Favorites go 6-2 last week. I go a perfect 8-0. Ho-hum. That's my first perfect week, by the way. I took a couple leaps of faith there, and they ended up working out for me. You went with Georgia, and you went with Vanderbilt. Kentucky's still running all over the Commodores.
Yeah, this is my favorite part of the week when we look back at what I did wrong the week before. Yeah, I think I've finally sworn off Vanderbilt. I was going to pick them this week, and I emailed at the last minute. I said, I can't do it. I just got to stop. So I'm stopping. Today is the day.
Right, so real quick, let's take a look at the records for the season so far and where we stand. You can see right there, favorites 71-15, 73-13 for myself, 66-20. I don't want you to go chasing and picking some crazy games just so you think you can get back in this thing. The viewers, they rely on you to use your in-depth knowledge week in and week out to make a decision based on that solely, not just trying to chase down, the title, which we don't really know what we're playing for at this point other than pride. So people are relying on you for this, Alex, and rightfully so.
Yeah, there's a certain element of integrity to all this, Hans, and I appreciate that. I understand my journalistic duty here. So will I make a couple crazy picks today? Probably, and is that coincidental? I don't know. It's up for the viewer to decide. So we'll just have to see what happens here.
All right, Alex, let's go ahead and start breaking it down. Again, this is Bud Light's Predictions Amongst Friends. Bud Light, we don't just brew beer, we brew beer for friends. And we'll start it with the aforementioned Georgia Bulldogs. The former #1 team in the country last week took it on the chin on the road to the Tigers. This week, they welcome in SEC foe Kentucky, a team who last year took them down to the wire in Lexington, a raucous environment, a physical football game. But Georgia, I guess the question is at this point, Alex, how do you respond? You still got a lot of football left ahead of you. In your ultimate goal, a lot of people believe, and I'm one of them, that it's still there for you to get in that playoff, and it all starts with Kentucky on Saturday.
Yeah, the motivation is still there for Georgia. You got a national title in front of you. You would hope a team would still be able to get up, take that punch from Auburn and get back up the next day and get ready for this game. But I do worry a little bit about Georgia potentially looking ahead. You got that rivalry game with Georgia Tech, and then they're already in, the Atlanta game in a couple weeks. So there's a lot to think about in terms of the future for these Georgia players that can definitely get ahead of themselves. And I do like the fact that Kentucky actually showed a semblance of defense last week. I know they were playing Vandy, but they picked off Shermer 4 times. I think he'd only thrown 3 all year, and really turned that game from a close game into a rout on the defensive side of the ball. And I think it just bodes a little bit. It bodes well for Kentucky, because Georgia's down right now a little bit, and Kentucky finally played some defense, and they still have that really strong running game. So I think it'll at least be a fun game for a half. I hope Kentucky can really bring it.
Let's talk a little bit about that pass defense you just brought up. Last week, Fromm forced to throw the ball a lot more than he wanted to. They were behind in the game. You mentioned the picks. This Kentucky defense, statistically, I think they're 122nd in the country in pass defense, 123rd. Is this an opportunity for Jake Fromm and the Georgia passing game to get right before that big game in Atlanta?
Yeah, but I also think, the running game has to kind of get right and get back on track. After last week, just nothing really worked for Georgia, and I know they got that sort of consolation drive at the end. Fromm got his touchdown pass, but I think both facets of that offense, they really need to kick it in gear this week, and it's a good team to do it against. Kentucky's not great on defense, but again, you got to be careful. Kentucky, they're a really strong team this year, at least compared to where they usually are in the standings. And I think Georgia does need to get their running game right as well as their passing game.
Yeah, last week could not get out of their own way. Auburn completely shut that running game down. You got to think Kentucky's going to come in with, I guess, the same kind of game plan I would expect. So I think, being senior day in Athens, and a lot of these games we're going to break down today, Alex, you're going to be honoring the seniors on your home field. There's going to be a sense of pride with those guys where they don't want to go out with a loss. A lot of stuff still ahead for Georgia. So, I mean, the line in this is 21.5. I don't know that Georgia's going to cover that. I think this is going to be a Kentucky team that's going to look to respond to what happened last year, coming up a little bit short. But I do think Georgia wins this game. 21.5 points, I'm not so sure. By the way, if Georgia wins this, is the first time they go undefeated at home in 6 years. So they got that going for them. Give me Georgia. I've got Georgia too. I just wonder how close of a game it's going to be. I think Kentucky's going to give them a good fight in the first half. But if I'm a Georgia fan, I'm really looking for a blowout this weekend, and for them to get back to what they were doing before that Auburn game where they were just running people over. It's a little bit of a red flag if they struggle in this game, because again, you've got a decently tough game against GT, and then you've got to go to Atlanta and play at Alabama. I think this is the week where things have to get right quickly. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of a rough road the next couple weeks, I think, for Georgia trying to get back on track. Yeah, it's a great point, Alex. So there you have it. Both of us there on Georgia. That's our Bud Lights prediction amongst friends. Got some great comments coming in here on their Facebook Live page. Be sure and hit us up there. It says kitty cats are going to be purring after what the Dogs do to them tomorrow after that disappointing loss. We'll take some more of your comments on the Facebook Live page as well. Moving along, obviously an interesting week in Knoxville, to say the least. It's been an interesting season so far. Butch Jones, the coach, no more. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But here comes the LSU Tigers. We know about their season so far, the disappointment to Mississippi State, the home loss there to Troy State, but they beat Auburn. They've built a little bit of momentum here, and this is a team coming in. They're ranked 20th in the latest polls, playing with a lot of momentum. I think LSU, sky's the limit. I mean, you're talking about Outback Bowls, some of the bigger SEC tier bowls in this game. They have a lot to play for. I'm just curious what kind of effort you're going to get out of Tennessee.
Yeah, that's the big question is, are they going to be motivated, now that Butch is out of town? And that could really go either way. They could roll over, or they could, say, hey, we want to prove that we're more than the team that we've been all year. I think the problem area on paper is that for LSU, Darius Geis is really hitting his stride running the football. As Alex Hickey, our LSU reporter, pointed out this week, he just needs two more carries to become eligible for the SEC's all-time yards per carry list. And once he does that, he'll be number 1 in conference history, about 0.3 yards ahead of Bo Jackson. So I think that sort of speaks to how good of a back Darius Geis has been, and the fact that he's going up against Tennessee this week, which just gave up more 400-plus rushing yards to Missouri last week, which is a passing team, by the way. I think that's a bad combination for the Big Orange.
Yeah, Brady Hoke going to be the head coach in just kind of laying in the weeds there for the rest of the season. What's your take on the Tennessee coaching job right now? I mean, what kind of coaching job is it? Is it one of the upper echelon opportunities out there as far as the openings and what potentially could be out there? And who do you think they go after?
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty frankly, it's not one of those, top 10 jobs in the country like maybe once upon a time it was. But there are, in the coaching industry, a lot of these guys, they've got decades of experience, and to them, Tennessee just 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago was one of the best programs in the country. And I think it is a place where you can recruit well and you can win. You get these big opportunities on the big stages, and you're not in Alabama's divisional. You do have to play them every year, but there is a path, to Atlanta every season. So I think it is a pretty high profile job. And, it's been kind of crazy reading all the John Gruden rumors. It seems like the Tennessee people following that are either very much pro John Gruden, or they think you're crazy if you're pro John Gruden. So it's probably not going to happen there. I don't think Chip Kelly's going to happen. I don't know if Dan Mullen's going to happen. But the good news is there's a lot of mid-tier candidates that would be a really good fit, I think, for Tennessee.
I've never seen so much wild speculation for a coaching job over the last decade. Every time this thing pops up, it's Gruden, it's Jeff Fisher, it's Candace Parker. I mean, they just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Look, our prediction here, this is a no-brainer for me. LSU, you talked about Darius, guys. I think he gets that record. There's been some pretty good players in the SEC running the football. What a tremendous honor that'll be from him. Tennessee can't stop anybody. I mean, let's just be honest. They can't stop anybody. LSU, this is a young team up front. They have gotten better as the season goes along. Geis is healthy. I think LSU goes in there and blows doors. Give me LSU all the way in this one.
All right. Well, at the beginning of the show, we talked a little bit about that journalistic integrity and bringing the truth to the fans. And I'm gonna throw a little bit of caution to the wind here, and I'm gonna believe in Brady Hoke. I'm gonna believe in sort of that Tennessee magic, and believe in these players who have been down and out all year. People have been writing them off. I think LSU is a football team you saw against Troy that is susceptible to a pretty big upset. And I think Tennessee just plays with a little extra energy this week at home. They want to prove something with Butch Jones out of town, and I think they're going to pull it off against LSU. I'm crazy, but I think that's going to happen.
You might not be too crazy. We'll talk about it next week. But if they don't win this, they're 0-7 in the SEC. And the only thing that stands between them and a winless season in the Southeastern Conference could potentially be the Vanderbilt Commodores. That's what's happened to Tennessee football. All right, that's our Bud Light prediction for LSU, Tennessee. Moving along, next on the docket, Texas A&M and Ole Miss, which can be confusing for guys like you and I when you have a guy named Jordan Ta'amu at quarterback for Ole Miss, and they're playing Texas A&M. Very similar. There's even an apostrophe in there. What can you say about this guy, Ta'amu, since he's come on for Ole Miss? Now, great, he's got great weapons on the outside, two of the best receivers in the country, but this guy hasn't skipped a beat since Patterson went down.
Yeah, he's killing it. I mean, you look at the numbers he's put up in these 3 starts, almost 1,200 yards in those games, and putting up touchdowns. He's been a lot of fun to watch, and this is a game where we're probably going to see a lot of points. I think the over/under might be something like 68. I forget, but I think the over is a fairly safe choice in this game, because not only do you have Ta'amu, who's Hawaii-born, New Mexico JUCO guy who just sort of nobody cared about until Patterson went down. And on the other side, you've got Nick Starkel, who's starting to come into his own a little bit for Texas A&M, filling in for, really replacing Kellen Mond in the lineup. So both these guys have been playing very well. They could be sort of the future of the program, and we can probably have a whole other discussion about Shea Patterson's future at Ole Miss. But this is going to be a fun game to watch the quarterbacks and see which one is maybe a little more legit this weekend.
Yeah, I don't care if the total's 75 points in this one. If I'm a gambling man, I'm going over, because I haven't seen Ole Miss play any defense this year. Coach Luke, he doesn't really get a ton of credit for what he's dealing with. Now, there's still some athletes left over from the freeze classes and whatnot, but as far as motivating these guys week in, week out, dealing with losing your starting quarterback, and yet they seem to have a little bit of momentum going right now. I'm surprised that people are still talking. How do you evaluate the coaching situation at Ole Miss? How I should say that.
I've been impressed by Matt Luke, and this is going to be a really tough job for them to fill. If he's not the choice, and I think all of us have sort of gone through this year with the understanding that he's probably not going to be back next year as a head coach. But To find the right person to run this program when you have possibly these NCAA sanctions coming down, and that's still sort of like a cloud hanging over the program, and recruiting has really hit a rut the last couple years. It's going to be hard to find that person who's going to be willing to put pen to paper and stick it out in Ole Miss for a few years. So I think, if Matt Luke wins this weekend, maybe pulls an upset in the Egg Bowl, right, which I think is possible. This offense is fun to watch. I think they certainly have to pay attention to what he's done and potentially give him an opportunity there.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the Egg Bowl should be a classic this year, the way Ole Miss is winging it around. I do want to talk about Kevin Sumlin. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Without Johnny Manziel, really hasn't accomplished a whole heck of a lot since he's been the head football coach there. But you see the talent, especially at the quarterback position. I think Starkel can play. He was the guy before the season started. I think he's the guy they had in mind. Now that he's there, you got some young guys up front. It seems to me like they're positioned to go in the right direction, but what do you think the odds of Kevin Sumlin being there next year are, whether it's his decision to go elsewhere or whether the athletic department decides that they want somebody else to take over?
I think it's very slim that he's going to be back. It seems like a doomed marriage for a while, and this entire year, that's the way I've looked at it as, he's probably not coming back, whether it's his decision or their decision. And I think that was pretty much set in stone in the spring when the AD went on Feinbaum show and said that 8 wins isn't going to cut it. He's got to get to 9. He's got to get to 10. And you look at their schedule, and even if he gets to 9, it's really it's not going to cut it for them this year. So I don't think this is going to happen in 2018. I think someone's going to find a new landing spot. There's going to be another program that's really happy that he did.
Well, I'm going with Texas A&M with this one, even though it's on the road. I'm going with them because of the defense. I think their defense can get it done. They get after the quarterback. I'm looking forward to seeing Tamu play against some pass rush, see some pressure. I know he can make plays with his feet, and he's going to have to if he wants to find a way to get the win. I expect a lot of points in this one, but I think A&M makes enough plays defensively, maybe a couple turnovers, some special teams play to get the win on the road and get that program back on the right direction. And maybe at the end of the day, after a bowl, they're looking at an 8-win season. Now, the SEC West, that's not bad, but that's not going to exceed the expectations that were presented, as you mentioned, on the Feinbaum show by the AD before the season. But give me A&M in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way. I like what Mississippi's been doing on offense, and you look at someone's track record at A&M, and this is the point of the season when his teams, they begin to fade really, really badly. And, I see Ole Miss really moving in a positive direction. I think there's going to be a lot of points on both sides. I hope that Starkel and Te'amu both put up a lot of yards and touchdowns. If nothing else, just for the entertainment factor. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the Rebels who get that winning touchdown and they get the victory.
All right, there we go. Split on that one. I'll go A&M. He's going Ole Miss. This is Bud Light's prediction amongst friends rolling along, and we have the Arkansas Razorbacks, what's been a disappointing season for them, taking on Mississippi State. And, of course, the story today, Alex, coming down, Jeff Long, the athletic director at Arkansas, fired basically today. So Brett Bielema, you throw that 11-27 record in the SEC on top of a new athletic director coming in, he's done. I don't see any way, anyhow, a new AD comes in there and it's like, you know what, Brett Bielema's my guy. Let's go get this thing.
Yeah, this program seems kind of dead in the water right now, and especially under Bielema's direction, he needs a fresh start. They need a fresh start. And it's not a hopeless case, but I think they're going to need a year or two to sort of rebuild with a new coach. And again, there's a lot of great mid-tier options out there, but you're right in that this is doomed. It's not going to happen for Brett in 2018 in Fayetteville, and fans, I think, have already moved on.
Well, let's talk about the Bulldogs. Mississippi State, Dan Mullen earlier this week addressing the idea that possibly he would consider other job opportunities, primarily the Florida job. He says no, he's happy where he is. Are you buying it?
At this point, I got to buy it a little bit because it seems like we've had this conversation so many times, throughout the years, and he's stuck with MSU. He's, even after that #1 ranking year with Dak Prescott, he's stuck with him, and there wasn't the right job that opened up at the right time. And it just seems like there's enough doubt as far as Florida and Tennessee go, in his relationship with Florida that I don't think it's going to happen at either of those schools. But I think it would be a big get for Florida or Tennessee if they can land Dan Mullen. But I'm not convinced he's going to either one.
And you can't deny the job he's done there. And, you know, you look at Fitzgerald and how he's continued to get better. Man, he was so impressive in that game against Alabama on Saturday night. I mean, he single-handedly put that team in the offense on his shoulders. He showed tremendous leadership, tremendous grit, and he threw the ball better than I think I've ever seen him. A couple big drops ended up costing him. You knew Alabama at the end of the day was just going to find a way to get it done just because they have the horses. But you got to tip your cap to this young man. A heck of a season, heck of a career. And by the way, Coach Mullen, he's coming back next year.
Yeah, absolutely. A great game from Fitzgerald. For those who don't watch him that often, he's been a little painful through the air this year. You know, yards per attempt is down, and he's a little loose with the ball in a gunslinger way. He can really throw it, though. I mean, a few of those passes, you know, like cannonballs, and I think he played very well. He's a great runner, draws some Tebow comparisons every once in a while, and he just has that powerful running style with a little more speed. So I think it's going to be a big week for him at Arkansas, and he's just the latest example of, you know, really solid quarterback play under Dan Mullen.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about this. I'm going with Mississippi State. Arkansas's rush defense allowing 191 yards a game. Arius Williams, Fitzgerald, I expect them to keep it on the ground, grind this thing out. Arkansas, when they've played the upper tier SEC schools offensively, they can't put up any points. The LSUs, who have you, the SEC West. I expect this one to be 35-10 Mississippi State, as Brett Bielema has just – he's like a sad puppy right now. And you can't really blame the guy because he's really tried hard to get things going there, but they just can't get right. Give me Mississippi State on the road.
It seemed like one of the, you know, sort of a last gasp thing for them to bring Austin Allen back. And
right.
That was just, you know, 10 points, and now Cole Kelly, you know, got a DWI charge, and it's a total train wreck. I think Mississippi State's the easy play this weekend.
Yeah, it's an interesting job, though. It's a very interesting job because Coach Petrino showed a couple years ago you can win there if you get the right guy there. Be very interesting to see who they get as athletic director, and then, you know, at that point you can speculate who he's got ties with and who he might bring in to be a head coach. All right, that's our Bud Light prediction amongst friends with Mississippi State and Arkansas. Moving along next, we got Mizzou, the Fighting Tigers on the road, taking on Vanderbilt in Nashville. Vanderbilt last week, very difficult time stopping Kentucky's run game. This week, they're going to have to deal with Drew Lock in his passing attack. Mizzou's on a roll, brother. This is not the same football team we saw early in the year. Barry Odom, I mean, what can you say about this guy? It was a done deal he was going to get fired. Now you can't get rid of the guy.
Yeah, you know, you watch that team play the first few weeks of the season, even 4 or 5 weeks in, and it just seemed like he was done. It was a done deal. He was out of town, and he's done a really remarkable job of turning the offense around. The defense is still fairly spotty, but it's definitely moving in a really nice direction for Missouri, and I think most people would bet on Barry Odom being back in 2018. And Drew Lock has really been a huge part of this turnaround. He had 35 touchdown passes this year. He's only 5 off the SEC record from Kentucky's Andre Woodson about a decade ago. And I don't think there's really any doubt Lock is going to reach that. If not in the next couple weeks, then, you know, in whatever their bowl destination is if they win this extra game. So their offense has become very fun to watch. Vanderbilt is completely disappeared. I don't know, like last week against Kentucky, that was very disappointing. And their offense has been a slight surprise. Their passing offense this year, and Shermer only needs one more passing touchdown to get that school record or to tie the school record. So there's a glimmer of hope, but I really think Missouri's just going to outgun them.
So if I'd have told you earlier in the year that Missouri would be bowl eligible at the end of the year, what would your response have been?
I said you're crazy. I said maybe they would have gotten to 5 wins and their APR was a record-setting, you know, academic score, and they're going to get into the Poinsettia Bowl or whatever. But I still would have called you crazy. I think there's no way.
Vanderbilt, by the way, if they can find a way to win this one and beat Tennessee next week, they could be going bowling. And then I guess you call it a successful year for Shermer and Coach Mason. So, we don't know. This game could go either way. I mean, it really could. I mean, but Mizzou's playing so well right now, Alex. I can't go against them. The number's 8.5. I wouldn't touch that, but I do like Missouri to go on the road, continue with this momentum, and close out the season strong. Give me the Tigers.
Yeah, Vandy's, they've allowed, I think, 34 points or more against every single SEC opponent. Mizzou's 10th in yards, 15th in points. Vandy's defense is 76th and 91st in those categories, and it doesn't add up for Vandy. They're at home at night game, but Missouri's just going to be able to move the ball on them a little too much, and I think the Tigers get a couple touchdown win, 3 touchdowns, somewhere in there.
It really is a heck of a story. I mean, when you look at where this team was, where they are, where they might be going, tremendous accomplishment for that team and their head coach. That's our Bud Light prediction. I do want to remind you guys, Bud Light, huddle up with some friends and some ice cold Bud Light, the beer that's famous for friends all day and all season long. All right, real quick on these last ones. These are throw-in games. Mercer, the Fighting Bears, going into Alabama. Tuscaloosa's tune-up. Coach Saban says their focus is on Mercer, not Auburn. They're not looking ahead. Your response to that, Alex, is?
Well, Alabama, they've never lost to an FCS team. They haven't lost to a non-SEC team in the regular season in 10 years. So this is kind of like, get your paycheck, Mercer, and skedaddle out of there.
600,000, by the way. So Bama, no surprise there. Auburn, the number 6 team in the country. They're taking on Louisiana Monroe, team they played last year. Took care of business 58-6. I don't expect anything, 58-7, I'm sorry. Don't expect anything to be different there. Kerryon Johnson, is he going to be a finalist in New York for the Heisman?
I think he definitely has a shot. The Georgia game was huge for him, and this is sort of I think Baker Mayfield's a strong favorite, but I think it's sort of a weak field past him. And Kerryon, definitely a big Iron Bowl would help him, advance. And then if you get in the SEC title game, certainly, I think he definitely has a shot at it.
Yeah, he's playing tremendous right now. So we'll both take Auburn on that one. Let's see. Moving along, South Carolina taking on the Wofford Terriers. Coach Ayers, all 30 years of him, brothers. Been there since 1988. By the way, they just won the Southern Conference. Congratulations to them. 9-1. They're ranked 7th in the FCS poll. But they're taking on a different kind of animal this week. South Carolina. Bentley, you see there, 5 interceptions his last 2 weeks. He hasn't been very sharp.
No, he hasn't. And, you might look at Wofford and say, oh, number 7 in FCS, and, maybe they can sneak out a win, but they're not exactly a juggernaut this year. I think their first 2 wins of the season were by 1 point each. They needed overtime to beat Chattanooga a couple weeks ago. So this to me is not as strong of an FCS team as their ranking might indicate. All
right, wrapping things up, last but not least, University of Alabama, Birmingham. They didn't have a football team this time last year, and here they are. They're back. They're 7-3, and they're bowl eligible, taking on a Florida Gator team, which is very well could be 1-8 right now. I mean, and that's sugarcoating it. You like UAB in this game?
I do like UAB. They're on a little bit of a streak here. I think won 5 of 6. The only loss was 1 point in overtime. I just think this is an opportunity for a mid-tier program to walk into Florida, beat the Gators. They don't have the talent that Florida has, but this is sort of an opportunity of a lifetime where this is not the Florida team that you expected. They've played, like you said, they could be 1-8 this year. So this is just a golden opportunity for UAB to walk in, play a better football game, and come away with the win. And I'm willing to put my name down next to the Dragons on this one.
All right. Well, I'm going Florida in this one. As bad as it's been, I just can't see Florida losing on senior day at home to UAB. I mean, I can't imagine it. But what a story it would be for Alabama Birmingham if they get it done. So I'm going Florida for there. And that does it for week 9. I do want to tell you, there's one thing you can rally behind: tailgating with ice cold Bud Light. There's been tons of Bud Light drink across SEC country this year, and we're getting closer and closer to the SEC championship, the Iron Bowl next week. Auburn, Alabama. We'll break it down for you next week. And any final thoughts, Alex? Going to the broad picture of things, if you will, in college football. What's your overall assessment of the college football poll?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to wait maybe a couple weeks for more of that drama. There just aren't a lot of big top 25 matchups this week, but keep an eye on Michigan and Wisconsin. I think Michigan still has a very, very fringe chance of sneaking into the playoff potentially. So I think more so watch the game because it'll be fun to see Wisconsin finally lose, but that might be a fun one.
All right. Yeah, that's a nooner, by the way. So we'll have a lot more to get to next week, but I want to thank you guys for tuning in as always. Bud Light Prediction Amongst Friends. Alex, always from my friend. Have a great, I'll see you before Thanksgiving. So have a nice weekend. We'll do this again next Wednesday.
All right, thanks, Hans.
All right, man. Take care. Do want to remind you guys, Bud Light celebrates college football, reminds all friends to enjoy the game and drink responsibly. Thank you, everybody, for contributing on our Facebook Live page. All it's been is an Auburn, Alabama hate fest. The whole thing. Just one text after another. So we'll let the show go off the air, and you guys can continue this while we're gone. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks to everybody behind the glass. Outstanding work as always. We'll see you then. Take care.